Hi, everybody. Good to be with you again. This is Aleš speaking, and I'm here back with my good friend Raphael and his roosters that you can hear in the background. So, living on a farm over there, actually, versus me sitting in corporate office. For me, it's 7 p.m. local time. Raphael, what is it for you?
It is just 5 minutes after 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Very cool. So I love this opportunity to connect with people despite the differences of time zones. And let me just remind a little bit to whoever is watching this what me and Raphael committed to. So we are actually partners in crime when it comes to participating on a self-development, or if you will, personal growth course that was organized by Leo Babauta. That's how we met. And we decided to kind of bring it to the next level because we've been having conversations about very deep topics that usually are not that present online. And we want to continue in that. And we believe this might be insightful or helpful for a lot of people. So that's why we are back. And today we are going to kick off with the very question of honest and open conversations. So the topic of the day is radical honesty, possible or not, and in the outside world. And what do you share with strangers? What not to share? How to stay polite and approachable without becoming, superficial husk of your true self. And that's what I like to open up with. And I've been talking for quite a while now, so I'm going to shut up and give it over to Raphael. How do you feel about today, and what's coming up for you around this topic?
Yeah, what a perfect topic for today of radical honesty. There is this feeling of creating an artificial quiet right now. My kids are making a lot of noise in the background. There's a fly flying around, and the roosters are crowing, and it's kind of the perfect training ground for, can I be present and can this be a real conversation? You and I talked about having this conversation once or so a month, and we decided to just share it, right? And going live, there's this feeling of like needing to polish myself, polish the environment, and control all these factors. And as you can hear with some of the chaos in the background, it doesn't always work that way. So it's for me, this is a great opportunity to kind of be willing to relinquish a little bit of that control and share honestly.
I love it, and it's actually one big difference from the last conversation. So I tend to be a little like OCD when it comes to technology, and a perfectionist when it comes to a setup. So I'm not at home with the fancy camera and fancy everything. I'm taking this stream from the office, and I was actually thinking. I was trying to kind of find a way around my schedule to make it home on time for this, but then I said, let's see what this does. I'm not getting any prettier while on nice camera. The quality of the conversation is not going to be elevated by that. Uh, let's see what this does. Let's simplify and go back to basics. See what it does to me, and see what it's going to do for the output that we are producing here.
Yeah, I like that, Alesh. Keeping it real on camera, despite whatever it is showing up. And we committed to doing this, and I think bringing all of it, as they say, warts and all. In my case today, it's it's the occasional fly and screaming children and all. There's something beautiful about being able to share the whole experience, and I think part of why I have avoided kind of the online world and social media is there seems to be a very polished version of everybody's story on there. And that's not to say people don't share the dark side. I think some people do. Maybe sometimes a little over the top, and no judgment there. But it's nice to get the whole story. We often hear about the success, like you said, the grass is greener. We see the accomplishments. We see what appears to be this kind of finished version of someone or what they're doing, and we don't see the failure. We don't see the hard work. We don't see the challenges. And I think for me, it makes somebody's story a lot more relatable. Like, I want to hear. I'm interested in the challenges. I appreciate seeing the result, if you can call it that. But I'm interested in hearing the things that got in the way, and how people navigate that.
Very much so. I think that the social media was a big topic for us because it creates, it amplifies the impression of perfection. And I'm actually old enough to remember how I related to this artificial idea of perfection when I was a child, or when I was growing up. And I was actually growing up in the 80s, and back then and up to the 90s, they were these Hollywood movies that I took seriously back then as a child. Let me give you a specific example. So it's Indiana Jones. Everyone knows Indiana Jones, and for me, the idea of being a grown-up was, of course, you are a PhD of archaeology, and at the same time you have a physique of athlete, and you are able to kind of shoot the gun, and you are able to do all of this. You are able to be perfect in every single way, and ladies like you. And this is how it is to be a grown up, unless you mess up horribly. So this stayed with me for a very long time. This idea of having it all, and it took me longer than I'm willing to admit to relinquish this and realize that this is not how it works. There's always this one facade. You can be an expert in one area, but it's a trade-off. Then you sacrifice someplace else. And Facebook and social media in general often makes us feel that we see this polished facade of every single individual. We don't see the backstage, and that it often creates this impression that you can have it all.
Yeah, and maybe you can, if you're willing to define what that means for you. Right? For one person, having it all is very different than another person's experience. You see a lot of people that train day and night. Maybe they have kids, maybe they don't. There's always going to be some sacrifice. We can't be everywhere at the same time. I'm certainly finding in my own life right now, as I take on more responsibilities, that certain things suffer as a result of it, and that I have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to fit all this into my life. For instance, right now, my partner is a little bit irritated with me, and my kids are a little bit irritated that this was like, hey, I need a little bit of space and quiet for this hour because I'm doing this thing, and it's inconveniencing them. And so it's there are options here, right? I could quit and say, oh, this is too much hassle. I can't do this with you, Alesh. Or, I can get angry with my family, or I can adapt. So today I'm adapting. My kids are supposed to be out on a hike with the dog right now. I don't know what happened. They're back inside bickering a few minutes later, and rolling with it, you're as good as your next at bat. So, we can dwell on our previous failures and our previous successes, but like, what are we going to do next? And this idea of having it all, we've got our whole life. That doesn't mean we've got our whole life to begin, but we've got our whole life to kind of fine tune. I don't know if you can still hear me. It looks like my video might have dropped off. Okay. um, yeah, just start and keep at it and tweak and play with it. There are so many like you can push it to such an extreme. Last night, I know I mentioned in the last episode we did, I mentioned David Goggins, and last night I was watching him and Tom Bilyeu interview. It was kind of a collection of several interviews, and I'm listening to this man with deep intent, you know. And this he's kind of like a perfect example of the never quite satisfied, right? He is just on this relentless pursuit, and he's very honest about the insecurities that he had growing up, getting called names as a kid, you know, growing up poor, and just feeling terrible about himself and deciding like I need to do this, and really feeling like he's completely alone in the fight. And that's still the mentality that he has today. I find that very useful, but that's definitely not going to work for the average person, right? There's no quit. And he's saying things like, I hate running and I hate stretching, but I'm going to go home and I'm going to stretch for 2 hours. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do this run. And so whether that's true, I hate it, I don't hate it, you know, who knows? But that's like an example of a relentless pursuit in this kind of never satisfied feeling, which I think can be useful. It's like this insatiable hunger, if you will. I certainly don't feel that. I like to have a little bit of kind of balance, and at the same time, if I get too comfortable, I feel like I don't want to do anything. I don't want to train. I don't want to try. I don't want to check in with my group. I don't want to do a live stream. I just want to, you know, kick my feet up and zone out. And then I feel like shit. And so I let that kind of fuel me. I think what I am learning to let go of is this need to have it all now and all working perfectly. Again, back to the capacity. So when we take on more things than we're currently doing, we're going to find out where the challenges are. You know, whether it's time or sleep or energy level, you know, that's a big thing. Sometimes we just don't feel like doing it. And so training that muscle of being able to do it anyway is certainly a useful and powerful thing to do. At the same time, if we're constantly holding ourselves to this impossible ideal and never feel like we're enough, that can be kind of crushing as well. And I think for a lot of people can stop them from taking action at all. I don't know how you relate to this.
I really like this this need to find a balance, and I'm really thinking now about what how it looks like in the world of not social media, but even interpersonal communication with people you are not particularly close with. And what you said, like having, you know, good days, bad days, you know, the situations you hate. I realized I'm hardly ever present to situations when people say they hate something or they don't like something. So here's the deal. I'm in the office now after you know, a long time when I was working from home. I'm one day in the office, and I realized, I had a conversation with a colleague. I realized that I cannot create what I would consider to be genuine human bond with someone, and this is like almost a quote. I can't connect with you if I haven't seen you struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
need to see you at your best and at your worst, and in the middle when you don't feel like doing that. It's if I only see the picture of you waking up, you know, like clockwork, 5 a.m., doing your push-ups, you're not a human for me. But at the same time, none of us want to kind of share this image of the grumpy self when I'm like, yeah, today I really don't want to do that. And you don't see, you know, Facebook updates. Oh, today was really horrible for me, and this is my messy hair picture. You know, well, present company excluded. But you never see that, and that's what's missing for me. and I'd like to bring this to the world, and I'm trying to do that through these conversations we have, but I don't really know how to, and I don't know where to draw the line. How would you do this, Raphael? How do you decide whom to with whom to open up, and to show this rough part
Yeah.
of the growth?
This question is a really good one for me right now, and it's very relevant. You know, you and I just started another coaching course, right? Geared at connection and creating clients, and I'm seeing a lot of people share in what would appear to be a very vulnerable and honest way. And I found myself asking the question, like, if I share totally openly and vulnerably and tell you about all the shit I'm going through and everything, you know, is that me convincing you of how vulnerable and open I am? Is that different than me showing you the polish? So I think just tapping into being honest about the experience that we're having as it changes. So yeah, I'm having a challenge with this. I'm finding it hard to connect with new people. I'm struggling in my training sessions right now, but I'm still doing it. You know, so I think the line, I think it's okay to cross the line. First of all, I think if we get too focused on like, where do we draw the line and how much we can get caught up in the little details. And I think that can prevent us possibly from sharing openly. And I'm saying this not as some expert on the matter, just as what is kind of coming up right now as I think about it. Because I have found myself wondering as I kind of enter back into social media and connecting with people in this way after quite a while of stepping away from that, asking myself this very question, like, what is useful to communicate? What is just fluff, or what is just trying to appear a certain way? And I think whether you're, kind of making errors about your personal development or going over the top about the struggles, either one of those, but who knows, maybe sharing in that way will really hit home for someone. Maybe it'll make all the difference for one person that's like, yeah, I really identify with that. And I like hearing that I'm not the only one going through this shit. It's easy to see the highlight reels and feel like, man, I'm so far away from that, and I'm not going to be there.
Raphael, I love it. I actually wanted to bring in a quote that's very inspiring to me. Let me put it on the screen. And you mentioned the highlight. This is what I've seen. And I keep reminding this to myself, the idea of I'm looking at, my dirty laundry self and comparing it to, the front stage, makeup, prettified, perfection version of others. And that's always detrimental to the progress, at least in my case, and it affects my self-esteem.
Yeah. I think that's easy to do, and I think that's part of the reason why I avoided it. And at the same time, I have to say that seeing some of these highlight reels, seeing some of these clips, listening to some of these conversations, I cannot understate how much impact they have had in my life, in wanting to push myself and look at my own self-imposed limitations. And sometimes I need somebody like David Goggins, who's showing me the extreme example of what a human being is capable of. And he says it again and again that he's no different. He suffers and he hates it and he doesn't want to do it. The difference is he's made a decision, a commitment to be relentless about that. And we can all tap into some of that, right? I think that that's very extreme. I don't think the average person should tape up their shins when their feet are bleeding and proceed. You should probably seek some medical attention, get some rest, and come back another day. That being said, I love this example he gave about, he calls it the 40% rule. And essentially, if I understand his message correctly, it's that when people feel like they're at their limit, like they're at that 100% and they have nothing left to give, they're at that 40%. And what they really need to do is find that other 5 and break through. And I certainly know that that's been true for myself in a lot of situations where I feel like, okay, this is my level of comfort, and I think I'm ready to step off or put this down for a minute. And I think exploring that range of discomfort is a really good and productive place to be. For myself, it is right now. Just kind of playing with that. What I'm finding is that there's a lot of freedom once we break through that initial resistance. There's a lot of friction initially, and then on the other side of that friction, there's like a new wellspring of energy that can be tapped into. I may have gotten derailed a little bit and kind of lost in the weeds with this, but I think it's somewhat related to what we're talking about here.
I think it is very much, and I like these different flavors of the approach, because I know we share like views on many things, but I think I'm more on this. I'm easily intimidated, I think, compared to you when I see this, over the top inspiration story. Instead of seeing, oh, I can be that, I see this enormous gap between what I am and what this person embodies, that I get discouraged. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm never gonna get there ever. So why even trying to do the 5%? Yeah.
Well, because part of that is true, and that enormous gap, exists. I'm never going to be that person either. But when I see that, I go, I can be a tiny fraction of that. Like I can tap into some of that. I don't aspire to be like that. Some of these people, they don't have kids, they don't have a day job. Like this is someone who's living and breathing this 24 hours a day. And there are a lot of people living their life in that way. Most of them are like endurance athletes and Olympic trainers. And if you want to dedicate your entire life to training, we're kind of using physical training as an example here. But and Goggins says this too. This can be applied to other things in your life. So that's what he chose. That's his path. But your thing may be something completely different. It may be going after a PhD or, the career of your dreams or whatever it is. It's this pushing past that initial discomfort and being willing to keep trying, even though you may fail again and again and again. So I think looking at that gap, that's realistic. Yeah. The part that I would challenge is the why even try. The why even try is because you don't need to be that to be an improved version of where you are now, right? So we're talking about personal development, about self-improvement, and that question often comes up of like, why, and I think the why is that kind of nagging feeling for me. So I'll speak to my why. I can't speak to anybody else's, but for me, there is a nagging feeling of possibility that needs to be tapped into. For me, when it comes to physical movement, I've found that the more I move, the better I feel. So it's very self-serving in that way. I'm not trying to break PRs or do a certain thing. Of course, there's an appeal of like having a better physique and aesthetically pleasing, and maybe people will relate to you in a more positive way if you look a certain way and so on. But for me, it's very much a feeling that comes as a result of it. And there's a lot of resistance on a daily basis. And I'm still very much figuring out what works for me and what doesn't work. And I'm also figuring out the cost with some of these commitments. Often the cost is, less time with family. So for example, I'm trying to figure out ways where I can get my entire family involved in training. We have battle ropes and balance boards and things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And so back to the why is, for me, my feeling of satisfaction with myself is directly linked to the effort, the output that I put in physically. And that gives me the kind of mental space to then be able to pursue and tackle other things. So for me, it's very much a priority. Like if I don't take care of the physical training parts of my day, it's lingering and it's nagging at me all day long, and it won't leave me alone. So it's like almost not even an option for me anymore. Like it's easier to do it and get that feeling. And again, this is a space that I'm feeling like constantly wanting to expand and reach a little further and do a little bit more.
I love this, and that's what we actually touched upon last time, right? With the atomic habits from James Clear. Set the environment in a way that it's easier to do it than not do it.
Yeah.
And these, dopamine rush you get from that's basically it. You set the stage for yourself in a way that now it's paying the dividend. That's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you go backwards a lot. We were on retreat for a week, and I managed to stick lightly to my training days, but like the quality of my training sessions was way down. I was waking up at 3:00 in the morning because we were on a different time zone. And so I recognize how much a shift in my routine. And just a week before that, I had house guests for 2 weeks, which totally threw off my game as well. I managed to stick to my commitments of I'm going to do this on this day at this time, which is, by the way, what I found to be the only way to guarantee that it's going to happen for me. If I keep it vague and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do some kettlebell training next week, then it's not likely to happen. But if I say on Mondays at 3:00, I'm going to begin, and I'm going to give myself this much time to do it, and these are the moves that I'm going to be training with and working on, then I have a plan. And then it becomes easy. It's like show up at 3:00, put your shit on, and get to it. And if you have to start making too many decisions, you have to take some of that decision making out of it. But back to the challenges that came with the shift. So the guests, the retreat. When I got back from that, and Monday came and it was time to do my training again, I felt like I lost gains. I felt weak. I felt tired. I didn't want to do the shit. And you know what? I did it. And the truth is my training sessions felt horrible. I felt like I lost a lot of what I'd gained over the last few weeks. And it was a challenge, but it felt like a choice point. It felt like, okay, here's Monday. I've been committed to doing this thing for the last, 12 or 14 weeks or something. And now I feel like I'm in this in-between phase where I could really see it going either way. I could see dropping it and going, you know what, this isn't really working right now. Let me figure out a list of excuses that let me off the hook for why it's okay to give this up right now. And then I tap into that why. Like, why is it important to keep at this? And you know what? Ultimately, it's incredibly rewarding to follow through and do it anyway. So I've learned that it's better to have a shitty training session than skip your training session. Like, even if it's the shittiest training session, I don't care if you do 2 push-ups, that's better than 0. And the next day, do 2.5, do 3, whatever. This is what's working for me. And, I've got the rest of my life to keep this up. But for me, what I notice is that the physical conditioning keeps me better prepared for all the other challenges that come at me in life. The truth is that I do this because if I don't, I can't bear the anxiety and the depressive feelings and the stress that everyday life brings at me. So this is a way where I have full control over what I put in to the training session. And what I get back is a feeling of being able to stay in that discomfort zone. And I'm by no means an endurance athlete. In fact, I wasn't an athlete growing up at all. So all this shit that I've learned has been incredibly challenging. I didn't have that advantage of like playing sports in school or being an athletic kid or any of that. So I've had to kind of start from scratch and build up. But when I look at what that's like now compared to before, where I wasn't doing shit with myself and I was sitting around, there's just there's just no comparison. I feel like a more well-rounded, balanced person, and I feel like I'm actually able to bring something of value to those around me, including my family, and having energy to engage with my kids and things like that.
It's it's something that it's bringing up my inner sense of shortcomings. Today I tried to run to catch a tram, which I did catch, but it was abysmal. I was kind of the entire time, and it was just 50 meters, not even maybe. I was picturing myself like a year and a half ago when I was actually doing some physical exercise, and then I spent another 15 minutes of a tram ride breathing like a Darth Vader, into the respirator, and people in the tram I think they had an itch to call an ambulance. So I'm not there. I'm not there at all at this point, and I think that gave me this idea. Should I? You said it earlier today. How can I serve at least one person by sharing the story? And for me, really, the energy of today and what I'm about to do in the next couple of days is, how do I help someone through sharing that it's not working in this area, and instead of showing, if I think about it as a brushed diamonds with this, dozens surfaces, and we always show the shiny, the most polished part, but all the other ones are dusty. You had to make sacrifices for making space for these training sessions, and you mentioned them.
Yeah.
So should
Yeah.
my post on whatever network should be, hey, I did deliver something cool today, or should it be, hey, I almost had a heart attack while trying to catch a tram, and I probably could serve people better if I share this crappy part about my day, because that's something that's missing in the space.
Sure, both. Yeah. I mean, I look at my day today and I could easily, I mean, it's only 10:30 and I can show you a few highlights. I felt good. I got up early, fed the dog and let the chickens out. And then I got on my my rowing machine, and I rode 6K, and that felt really good. But the truth is getting to filming this today, or streaming this, I had to make a mess in some other areas of my life today. I had to let down my partner and a little bit my kids, and I'm going to have to clean up a mess later. But again, this is the second time we've done this. This is exactly what I mean when I say figuring out some things are going to get knocked out of balance when you take on something new. So now I need to figure out, how do I make space in my life to incorporate things like this, to keep doing the training sessions, and be able to take care of the most important things, which are the family and the household and things like that, right? So sometimes there's going to be a little bit of a mess in the beginning. That doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that you've failed at doing it. It just means that you need to adapt a little bit. You need to get to the, bring everything to the table and go like, this is a challenge I'm facing right now. This is what I'd like to do. How can I make this work?
Yes, I agree. It's great to hear it. I like to say that as I envision it, this entire exercise, this today's streaming, the last streaming, and definitely a couple more in the future, is going to be an exercise of showing the dirty laundry, because we don't have this figured out. We are learning as we go, and that's part of the process. Putting out imperfect work and learning as we go.
Indeed. And I think that's a beautiful thing, being able to commit to something despite the challenges, and despite the discomfort that arises from trying new things and getting your hands dirty and making a mess.
What I'm wondering, and I'd like to know your view on that, Raphael. is how to help people who might be, wavering a little. Like me, I consider myself to be not to be very, committed, driven, Goggins dedicated, to see the the journey between the before and after image. All these. I think physical exercise is the best one. Oh, from scrawny to brawny. From this or from losing this many pounds over this, and you have this picture before and the picture after. This could be us actually looking at us. I'm this scrawny, and you're the upgraded version, and but there's nothing in between. You don't see what was happening in between, and you don't see the shitty workouts, and you don't see the workouts that didn't actually happen, and you don't see the moments when the person wanted to quit and maybe they didn't. And most importantly, and then I'll shut up for a while, you don't see the plethora of individuals who did take that before picture and never made it to the after picture. But those people matter as well. And I think these people, I'm figuring it out as I go, these people who never had their after picture, how and what to share to help them. Because I'm the guy, I'm that person.
Yeah. Well, you can't let your failures define you, and you also can't let your successes define you. So even if you'd been training religiously for the last 2 years, Alesh, and today you were this upgraded version that you see possible for yourself, you've still got the next one. If you quit today, you're going to start going backwards, right? You're not going to stay there and be able to maintain. It takes work. And I think a lot of the people that are viewed as some finished product are still very much dealing with that daily struggle of grinding. It becomes a little bit more automatic, I think, for people when you get into a routine. If you're going to the gym 4 times a week, or if you have a home, routine or whatever it is, it kind of becomes part of your process. And it becomes, at a point, it becomes easier to do it than not to do it. For me, something that was very helpful is having streaks, like looking at this idea of streaks. So I'll use meditation as an example. I had a little bit of experience with meditation through yoga. I've been practicing yoga daily for several years now. But I didn't have like a formal practice that was dedicated to mindfulness training. I started using Sam Harris's Waking Up app, which, by the way, I highly recommend to anyone listening who's interested, whether you're just beginning or you're a seasoned meditator. There's great value there in the app. When I started that, there was a streak feature. It showed you how many days in a row you did the thing, right? And it's only a 10-minute daily meditation. So after about 700 and something days of doing this regularly, they got rid of the streak feature. And it wasn't like a casual, like, okay, here it's gone. There was an announcement and like, you guys don't need this. This is a crutch. I had mixed feelings about getting rid of it because I believe that attachment to not breaking my streak was part of what kept me at that. And now it's been probably about 1,000 days since I began using that app. It's not the only form of meditation I do, but I still use that every single day. And some days I'm in bed and I realize I haven't done it, and I do it and I may be falling asleep, but I'm still committed to doing it. And so that's just one example of get a calendar, figure out what it is that you're trying to do regularly or weekly or whatever the schedule is. Like I'll give you another example. Jerry Seinfeld, he puts a red X every day on his calendar, and his only job is to keep the red streak going. And that just means that he's going to write. It's not about what he's going to write or the outcome, but this is part of his streak process. So put that fucking X there and look at it and just go, I'm just going to put one more here. Don't worry about, oh, this is going to be so hard. How am I going to do this for 6 months? Just look at today. And if you miss today, fine. Tomorrow's another opportunity to start again. The same thing for me with the language learning apps. I've been using Drops and Duolingo for the last, I just hit a year 2 weeks ago. Again, daily. It started off with 5 minutes a day. For me, I knew that it was something that I wasn't likely to stick with if I didn't have a very specific time to do it. So for me, I was in the habit of sitting down with my coffee in the morning and opening my email each day, like probably a lot of people do. And I decided, you know what? My email can wait. I'm going to do, my commitment was just to do 5 minutes. Again, this is back to James Clear's Atomic Habits, like making things super easy. Keep the friction low in the beginning. Just say 5 minutes. So that was my commitment. 5 minutes or more in the morning. As soon as my butt hits the chair with my coffee, I open the app. 5 minutes later, I've done it. Next thing, after 3 months of that, I added the Duolingo and then again, kept going. Now I don't always do it in the morning, but I still do it every day. Once you get enough sessions under your belt, it becomes something that you have adapted to and you're able to keep it going if it's something that you really care about. And not to let setbacks throw you off too much. Everybody has setbacks. Everybody quits certain things. And sometimes quitting something is actually a good idea, right? Like if you're reading a shitty book, life's too damn short. Don't force it, like put it down, find a new one. That's fine. There are certain things that sometimes it's important to know when to fold, and when to say, okay, this is not for me. But nobody can really answer that except yourself. So I think that brings me to another point here. And if we're talking about radical honesty, like what about the radical honesty with ourselves? We're constantly looking for outside approval. And even though I can say this concept and like to believe that I'm not, the truth is, of course I am. Of course I'm looking for outside approval. Of course I want people that I interact with to like me. Of course, when I put out a video, I'm gonna naturally be curious, how many views did it get? Or what are the comments? Did anybody, and naturally some people are gonna think we're dorks and this is crap and maybe somebody gets some value out of it. The point is to be able to recognize that wanting to be acknowledged by others and wanting for other people to tell us that what we're doing is okay and that's good. But we need to answer that question for ourselves. We need to look at our own life and say, this is what I would like to do. And now others have a lot to offer in the sense of experience of telling us like how they got there. And maybe we can learn from some of their mistakes and some of their lessons. But ultimately, we're individuals and we have to find what works for us. And sometimes you try 50 things that don't work until you figure out the thing that does.
Yeah.
That's my rant.
Well, it was worth it for me, and I think actually that's the situation. It's like what, one person watching, so I don't know if it's your mom or my mom. It's probably not my mom because she doesn't speak English.
it's not my mom either. That makes both of our mom. My mom doesn't speak English either, and she's in Israel, probably not tuning in right now.
I guess let me bring it back a little to the dilemma I'm facing now. So I'm really trying to own the image of myself, like holistically. That sounded like more sophisticated than it's supposed to be. So I'll go specific. When we discussed it before a little bit, that I'm trying to kind of find a way to work with social media productively, I know both you and me. We've been through this, long times of avoiding completely. I quit Facebook in 2016 after the Brexit referendum. It kind of tore apart my group of friends, and I
Yeah.
quit for quite a while. And that it made me so happy. I didn't want to come back at all. And now I'm trying to work with these networks because they are powerful tools in many ways, but I'm trying to bring this honesty into it. And what I see in there is success story after success story. This the shiny edge of the or plane of the diamond, and
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that. I know these stories are to a large extent genuine. We do want to share success. I do want to share success when I have one, but I want to share more of the struggles as well. I wanna bring this authenticity into the game because that's what I believe will help people. And I don't know how to do that. And I know you're after similar thing, and I was wondering what's your take on that. Where do you allow yourself to really be open like this? Now on
Yeah.
YouTube, so that's big. Um, what's coming up for you? I mean, do you have advice for me, my friend, or a way to look at it?
Well, I think you're demonstrating exactly what you're saying that you're struggling with, like how to have this honest conversation. I think you're modeling that here by saying like, here's our imperfect video. Here's what I'm struggling with right now. I don't have an answer for that. I'm actually in a very similar place. I also kind of quit Facebook right around that same time, and ironically, what brought me back to Facebook is this group that we were in, which is about like personal development and fearless mastery and dealing with your patterns and all the parts of our life that we're kind of feeling challenged with. And back I found myself on Facebook, and I felt completely out of my element because it had been so long since I had engaged with people on this platform or online at all, aside from email. And so I'm very much figuring that out myself. Like, how do I share myself authentically? There are a lot of guards that come up wanting to protect ourselves, wanting to preserve our reputation and things like that. But that kind of honest rawness is it's trending right now. People want to see some of the realness, and I mean, we just, after the last year that we've all been through with COVID, we all have a lot of bullshit going on. We all have some darkness that we can share and some challenges, and I think we see a very small amount of that online, and I don't know. That's likely because the algorithm has, kind of worked out that people prefer to click on the highlight reels. If I write a post about how I've spent the last week on the couch watching Netflix or something, I don't think too many people are going to find that interesting. Or maybe they will. Maybe it'll make them feel better because they only spent one day on the couch watching Netflix or whatever it was. So I don't think there's a wrong or right way to do this. I think what you're demonstrating here is like coming forward and saying, you know what? I don't know. It's hard and I'm still figuring this shit out. But this is what we've got right now. I think people want to hear that. I think people want to see both sides. And it just kind of figure it out as you go. New things will come up. We've committed to doing this thing once a week. I imagine some days will feel easier than others. Some days will feel very on. Some days will feel not so much. Today's actually a great example of that. I feel like last week things felt pretty smooth for me. Going into the call, I felt very prepared and things were very calm. And today was the total opposite of that. And I saw the potential for what could have felt like chaos, like things not working out. And the commitment is to do it anyway and to have a real conversation. I mean, we were planning on doing this whether we were recording it or not. Obviously, knowing that it's streaming live, I think it's almost impossible not to kind of tailor your conversation, just even on a subconscious level, right? We're kind of going this way and that way, and I'm trying to curse a little bit less. But
I can attest to that.
Yeah. So, I don't have an answer, but I will say that I'm very much dealing with the same thing, especially as I realize going into coaching, the need to connect with people, myself living in a rural place and not going out so much into events and mixing and mingling with people. I need to now figure out how to connect with people in an authentic way online and share my story in a way where people might find it interesting, but keeping it real and staying authentic.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think you're right about it. I'd like to say that. So that's the moment, thank you for calling it out. This is, we had for this call, we had a like a short phone call with Raphael before we launched this one. I was a little tempted to kind of offer you, Raphael, to kind of postpone this one, but then I realized, no, I'm letting myself off the hook by offering you, hoping that you're gonna do that. And we discussed how are we curating this? How do we keep this honest? So I think we are trying to kind of surf on the edge of keeping this approachable and PG friendly or whatever it is, but at the same time, the core of the conversation is the exact same that we would be having offline.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. As we expand and kind of take on new things in our life, challenges come up. This is a place to share them, and hopefully a few people relate with the experience and maybe get a little bit of value of it.
I guess I'd like to kind of call out the one of the things that Adam Quine, a coach that both me and Raphael are now working with in his program, shared. And what he shared in his podcast earlier was something about vulnerability. And he said, well, vulnerability is to be displayed in the moment. So being vulnerable means sharing, hey, I feel insecure, I feel weak, I don't feel I'm having it under control right now. What is not vulnerability, Adam said, is the way we are kind of trying to work around it is to say, hey, I used not to have it under control in the past, but now I'm over it, and I'm going to tell you all about my vulnerable self as it exists in my past.
Mm-hmm. And yeah.
I'm trying to find a way to role model this, showing the growth and the struggle as it's happening, rather than showing the polished outcome, the after, the after 12 weeks program, six pack, and saying, hey, this is where I am, and I struggle to believe me, but it's in my past.
Yeah. I think I noticed some of that for myself in our previous first round of our group, subconsciously. Like maybe I had like a few months in a row where I was relatively free of anxiety, and I'm thinking to myself like, oh shit, I think I may have, like, I'm on the other side of this thing. And then all of a sudden it's like smacks you in the face and you're like, oh, did you miss me? I'm back. Like get used to it. I'm not going anywhere. And I think learning to embrace that shit as it comes up. And there's something very liberating about not having to fake the funk and pretend like everything's always polished. and say like, yeah, this shit comes up for me. If it doesn't come up for you, maybe you're not paying attention, or maybe you're full of shit. Um, and I think it's essential for learning is that you see both sides of this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's it's I know we are about to close for the day, so I think we unless there are questions, I think we realize that 60 minutes is a good healthy limit for us, and also for
Yeah.
you, Raphael, to go back to your animals. Here's what I want to say, and I'd like to hear from you how it's my commitment to you and to whoever is watching. Um, I I decided I'm gonna write like an article, a post um, about my kind of failing forward story. So it is a story of a past. So in this sense, in Adam Quine's terms, it's a vulnerability in the past. But I realized that in my I have I have had to kind of face a lot of insecurities about my career growth journey in my current job, and I always see these success stories of people who got promoted, and you never see the struggles, you never see the tears and sweat and whatever fluids are related to that. And I want to write about that. I want to write how uh, the struggle to get promoted, to actually move up in the company, how it made me look into places where I didn't want to look, and how it made me confront myself. And actually, that's how I met you. Joining the program with Leo and working on myself was my strive to achieve something outside. And I'm drifting off, but let me get more concise. Yes, my commitment is to share the story of the struggle, because I believe that can help people, and I think there's not enough of it in the space now. And we'll see what the algorithm will do with it and on the network. But if I can do something for the world and for the people who struggle as I did and still am, I think this is the thing to do.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And yeah, you mentioned Adam Quiney. We should probably let people know there's an excellent podcast available. His podcast, Get Lit. We recently started working with him in a group, but prior to that, I was getting tremendous value for free listening to his podcast. So I highly recommend that to anybody who happens to be watching this. Some excellent stuff there.
Absolutely. Let me put it on the screen for everybody, so you can check it out. And we are not getting paid for this, but maybe we should. We should talk to Adam and say, "Hey, Adam, by the way, you owe us."
Once we get that viewer count up, maybe he'll consider.
Maybe there have been 2 people watching this, so we want royalties.
Indeed.
So, how should we end it for the day, my friend?
In a suboptimal way, with radical honesty. We didn't come up with any grand way to finish it, but as we come to a close, I imagine you feel some sort of sense of relief. I appreciate you sharing that you were trying to give me an exit of, hey, are you sure you want to do this? I think you started with that yesterday, actually, when we were on our Fearless Mastery call. And you gave me an exit door. You said, hey, are you still ready to do this tomorrow? And there's that choice point. And I felt like saying no. It would have been more comfortable to say no, but you know what? I'm glad I said yes. And
me too.
I'm committed
It's
I'm
always
committed to
a
showing
treat
up
to
with
talk to
you.
you. It's always a treat to
Likewise,
talk to you,
Alesh.
and I just realizing on this call a couple of things. One of them, that yes, I was giving exit to myself as well. It didn't occur to me back then. at least there. So let's not exit. And for everyone who is watching, we are going to do this regularly. The plan for now is to do that on weekly basis. We may not stick to Wednesdays, but for now it's Wednesdays, the same time, 60 minutes increment, and it doesn't need to be the rant of the two of us. However, we enjoy each other's company and ideas. We are here also to take questions, comments, and invite you on screen if you want to be part of the
Indeed.
conversation. So thank you, Raphael. You have a great rest of the day,
Thank
which
you,
is longer for you than it is
Alesh.
for me.
You
See you next
too.
time.
Ciao.